UFC is back on Saturday night with UFC 249 coming at you from Jacksonville, Florida. This will be another crowdless show, just like the last production that they put on in the beginning of March down in Brazil. This card is stacked like flapjacks. It is loaded from the top to the bottom with 2 title fights, multiple former title holders, title contenders, and elite level prospects that are rising their way up the ranks. This is set to be one of the most incredible shows that the promotion has put on in its history. If we start to take a look at the main card, Tony Ferguson against Justin Gaethje, are you kidding me? That's one of the most incredible fights that fans could have asked for in the lightweight division if you were not to get that Khabib and Tony matchup. Why? Pure motherfucking violence. If we're talking about the violence and the carnage that might ensue on Saturday night in that main event, it might just be the bloodiest fight that you have ever seen, and for sure that we've seen in the UFC. All you gotta do is look up a graphic for the faces of Tony. Justin Gaethje has an elite All-American collegiate wrestling background, but he hardly uses it. Tony, on the other hand, likes to create scrambles, and he was a National Collegiate Wrestling Association national champion back in the day. So we may see that wrestling get used a little bit more than normal on the Justin Gaethje side, but at the same time, Justin Gaethje is the kind of savage that said, well, I hope one of those elbows that Tony throws breaks my nose, because I haven't been able to breathe through it for about 12 years since back in the wrestling days. If he breaks it, the UFC is going to have to pay for it, and hopefully we put on an exciting fight. What a savage. What an absolute savage. Then if we take a look, stepping down from there in the Bantamweight Championship, that is going to be the co-main event of the evening. We're looking at Henry Cejudo squaring off against the Dominator, Dominick Cruz. Dominick Cruz is the Bantamweight GOAT. You know, he's been one of the most elite level guys ever since the 135-pound division has been brought into the UFC from the WEC, and which his reign started. He's had the UFC belt strapped around his waist before. His only actual loss of that belt was against Cody Garbrandt. Dom is explosive, but Henry is fast, and I mean really fast. So this is going to come down to a question of, has Father Time crept into the equation for Dom, and how much does Dom really still have left in the tank? How much shelf life is there? Father Time is undefeated for every athlete. Dom just turned 35 in March, so we'll see how that works out for him. And on the other hand, Henry's going to be bouncing back from some surgeries himself, so you know we'll see how that shakes up for him. A lot of times that time off has an effect on fighters. However, most notoriously, you have Dominick Cruz, who has stated and maintained the position that ring rust does not factor in for him. He's came back and put on clinical performances after multi-year layoffs in the past. He's hoping to look to recapture some of that same magic and go on another run to reclaim the throne in that 135-pound division. Below that, the feature fight of the night. What an explosive matchup between two of the most heavy-handed guys that the UFC has seen in their heavyweight division. You have Francis Ngannou, who is a former title contender, going against the undefeated biggie boy Jairzinho Rosenstrike. If MMA math is anything to factor in here, which we all know how that is, they have a common opponent in Alistair Overeem. When Francis Ngannou fought Alistair Overeem, that was a first-round knockout with a posterizing finish that he pretty much made the Reem look like a Pez dispenser. On the flip side, with Rosenstrike fought him in a main event, and Rosenstrike needed 24 minutes and 54, 56 seconds, something like that, of that fight to be able to pull it off. As he was losing on the judges' scorecards up to that point. You know, he didn't have an answer for a lot of what Alistair was bringing. Rosenstrike, though, also has more than 80 professional kickboxing fights, so we'll see if that kicking game comes into play against Francis on Saturday night. Moving down from there, you have what is the most, I guess, I feel like it's an underappreciated fight that's on this main card. You have Jeremy Stephens against Calvin Kattar. These featherweights come to bang. They both have a kill or be killed. I'm either going to come back with my shield or come back on it sort of mentality. Jeremy Stephens has, he has the most losses in UFC history, yes. However, Jeremy Stephens goes out there and gives it his all on a night in and night out basis when he's in the octagon. You could argue that in his last fight, had that been the full 5 rounds against Yair, the way that it was originally scheduled, it was starting to shift momentum and starting to go in his direction. Yorgan De Castro against Greg Hardy is going to be the first event of the pay-per-view of the main card. There's still not a lot to see on De Castro because he's still young, obviously, in his career, and as well as Greg Hardy hasn't had a whole ton of cage experience. Greg Hardy is someone that the UFC is very high on. Greg Hardy obviously has a checkered past. Greg Hardy is an elite level athlete, period. Just think of it this way, fight fans, if you didn't know this part about Greg Hardy was a Pro Bowl caliber defensive end in the NFL. He was one of the best in the league at what he did. And with him being a defensive end, meaning that he's a pass rusher, that's one of the highest paid guys in the league. So he went from making millions and millions of dollars in the NFL to being in the fight game. If he had the option, if he had the ability, if he had the liberty to go back to the NFL and make that money, or to have never left from making NFL money, I'm sure that he wouldn't have made the jump. But it's because of his personal conduct issues that he has been placed in this position. But from all accounts surrounding him, he's been very humble to the process and has committed and invested himself within becoming the best MMA fighter that he could possibly be, even moving in and living at the ATT dorms down there in Florida. A card is deep. I mean deep. If we're at this point of the breakdown and we're barely getting to the Cowboy Cerrone against Anthony Showtime Pettis rematch. This is going to be the main event of the prelims. In the first fight, if you remember, Anthony Pettis was able to score a knockout of the night honor against Donald Cowboy Cerrone with a liver kick. That was a different point in time in Showtime's career. There's a lot of other factors that were involved that were helping Showtime that, it matters. It matters. This was right before Anthony Pettis' run as a champion. A couple of fights right before that point. I think Anthony Pettis is a dick, so I hope that Donald Cowboy Cerrone goes out there and brings Cowboy to the cage. If Donald shows up, might be a rough night, but if Cowboy shows up, oh yeah, it's game time. Fabricio Werdum makes his return from a multi-year layoff due to a USADA violation against Olynyk. I think it's safe to say, guys, that we might see some grappling in this one. Werdum, he's one of the most accomplished grapplers in the sport of jiu-jitsu. He is going up against a guy in Olynyk who has 72 pro fights in his career, in which he has more than 40 submission victories. Some guys don't even accumulate 40 total fights in their entire career. This guy has more than 40 wins by submission alone. Next is Carla Esparza, the Cookie Monster, the inaugural strawweight champion, taking on Michelle, the Karate Hottie Watterson. Michelle is coming off of a title eliminator fight against Joanna Jędrzejczyk that happened a few months ago, and Carla Esparza is trying to string together her 3rd win in a row. Carla's trying to make her way back, obviously, into that top contender sort of situation. An impressive win from Michelle puts her right back into that contender conversation to where, she's on a short list to be chomping away for another title shot again in the near future. The next fight is perplexing. Both of these fighters that I'm about to speak on have mentioned mental health issues at certain points throughout their career, or mental health being a factor at times during their career, and that's Uriah Hall and Jacare. These are elite level middleweight guys. Jacare, obviously, he made a little jump up to the light heavyweight division for a quick second and then is right back down. Jacare is a highly accomplished world champion in jiu-jitsu, and Uriah Hall is literally been dropping jaws since he was on The Ultimate Fighter. I believe it was season 17. It was the Sonnen versus Jones season back in the day with just some... I don't even know what to say aside from just spectacular kicking clinics. The knockouts that he's had on guys were flat out scary to watch. Seeing the reaction to the trauma that he inflicted upon guys, seeing the way that their body responded, was a little bit gut-wrenching at times, you know. I don't think that Jacare wants to keep this one standing. I don't think he wants to take the chance of rolling the dice that Uriah has the ability to let one slip through and connect. Although Jacare, it is worth noting, Jacare does have heavy hands. Jacare has, I believe it's 8 knockouts on his career. So I just, like I say, maybe he fills him out for a second, but I would anticipate Jacare trying to take this down to the ground. Following that fight is arguably what may be the fight of the night. You have Vicente Luque going up against Nico the Hybrid Price. In Price, you have a dude who's kind of unorthodox. He's wacky. He's funky in his style. He can finish from anywhere. In his most recent fight, he finished James Vick with an upkick. You have Vicente Luque, who's a little bit more technical, but is also not afraid to go in there and brawl and bang it out, as evidenced by the victory over Mike Perry. Yes, the victory that had Mike Perry's nose looking like it was a zigzag and shit. What can I say about Thug Nasty? Bryce Mitchell has to be, outside of Derek Lewis, the most candidly hilarious guy in all of MMA. If you can provide me a better example who does better interviews and just things that make you laugh, please share it with me. I challenge you to just go out there and watch a Bryce Mitchell interview. It doesn't matter which one, just any interview. Give him a few seconds to talk, and I guarantee you he's going to give you something that leaves you chuckling. Then you have Rosa. You know, Rosa he's a guy who was undefeated before he got to the UFC. He's had a little bit of the yo-yo effect since he's been there, but the dude is tough as nails, and it'll be interesting to see how he fends off the jiu-jitsu of Bryce Mitchell, who was, he made internet fame or became viral after his most recent fight when he became only the second fighter in UFC history to pull off the Twister submission, the other one being the Korean Zombie. In the curtain puller for the night, you have Superman Span going up against Smiling Sam Alvey. This may be the cautionary, oldest day tale within the MMA world of, the promotions or the sport kind of cannibalizing its own. Sam Alvey has been a journeyman who's been around for a long time. He's on a 3-fight skid right now currently, was once a very highly touted guy within that division, or within a run of a couple of different divisions at certain points. Alvey has a lot of ability, but he just hasn't been able to figure it out in these last couple of fights, whereas Span is on a 7-fight win streak. And he's had some pretty impressive victories in that time frame, so we'll see how this shakes up. This is set to be, like I say, one of the most absolutely entertaining top to bottom cards that the UFC has put on. It is going to be something that is historic. That is 100% for certain. You got to tip your cap to Dana White and the UFC brass, as well as the state of Florida, for kicking the ball back in motion and getting things going as far as reopening society, despite all of the concerns in the midst of the pandemic. It looks like, from everything throughout this week, all the announcements, that they're doing a lot of things to make sure that safety is of the utmost importance. Fighters have shown the videos of them getting corona tested. We'll see how this whole thing shakes up. I am excited for these fights. Just looking at the lineup gives me a chubby. Let's reconnect after the fight. Let me know what you think coming into it. Who do you have? I'm Jordan Kurtz with comments from the Peanut Gallery and the MMA Plug powered by Mile High Sports. Thank you for checking in.